Hey guys, this is Dave here with the Code Quarters Hangout on CodeBuddies.org. I just wanted to create a series of several videos walking you through the initial steps of creating the development environment and getting you caught up to speed to where we currently are with the Code Quarters project, EventImp, which was decided way back in session 1 to be a Ruby on Rails application with a MongoDB backend. This is actually an opportunity for anyone who is curious about the Code Quarters Hangout, but maybe was a little hesitant to come right in the middle of things to join right now and get caught up to speed right away. Or for anybody who is with us since the beginning who might have had some problems setting up the development environment, maybe was a little daunted by all the technical aspects, to come in and get up and running really quickly. So in this video, I'm just going to show you the steps that I took to make sure setting up a development environment is as easy as running one or two terminal commands. And then later, after we've set everything up, I'm just going to show you the current state of where our EventImp project is, and then the next series of videos walk you through essentially a mini tutorial of how Rails works together and how we've got to the current state of where the project is on the Git repository. So what I'm doing here is, if you read my blog post I wrote back in October and you saw all these different configurations to set up the development environment, I've essentially done exactly that within the Vagrant configuration file to run all these commands automatically when you spin up Vagrant. Now, I highly recommend that you go to vagrantup.com and install Vagrant along with VirtualBox. This will just allow us to run everything off of a very standard operating system with no kind of pre-existing dependencies or binaries that might screw up our development environments, and we're all working off the same exact thing. Now, if you're on Windows like I am here, I highly recommend that you download Baboon, which is a replacement for essentially your command line or your PowerShell. This will mirror exactly what it's like to be running in a Unix or a Linux or a Mac OS X type environment. So it creates this very pretty shell, which looks a lot like this. You have access to all the Unix commands, and it just looks very pretty, and you could do a lot more things with it. So let's get started. First thing first is probably want to change directory or CD into a path where you want to initially configure and initialize Vagrant in your virtual machine. So in this case, I created a folder called Sandbox, and I'm in it right now. So what you want to run is Vagrant init to initialize, but I've actually made it very simple. If you go to my GitHub repository, you'll find that I've already pre-configured it. So you want to just click raw, and you could take this URL and you could copy that. What you want to do is just paste it there, along with CURL with an output, call it Vagrant file, and that will just download all the contents of this Vagrant file from my Git repository and output it into the Vagrant file in this current directory. You see? So if I read it, you see that all these things have been pre-configured for you. What you want to do is just change the name. I'm going to just call it Sandbox. Right, and you want to change the ports in case you have other configurations running, other virtual machines running with different ports. I'm just going to call it 5000 or something. I think anything above 3000 should be safe. And that's it. All you have to run is Vagrant up. Now this will take some time to download everything and set everything up. So, you know, hang on tight, grab a coffee, maybe grab some lunch. It'll take take a while, but when you get back, everything will be set up. Okay, so after Vagrant runs everything, you'll be back in your terminal. So you can Vagrant SSH and voila, Now you're in the Ubuntu 14.04 virtual machine. And you can tell because I made the setting with Vagrant here instead of what it looks like up here. And if you do an ls or an la, you see, okay, this is your root folder with all the configurations. And you can change the zshellrc as if you were going to change like your bash rc if you want to do any aliasing, if all that sort of thing, that configuration. You notice that it's automatically installed this rbenv. And what rbenv does is allow you to install multiple versions of Ruby and manage which version you want to use. So for example, you can list all the versions of Ruby that you want to use. So you can use JRuby, mruby, I don't even know what some of these are, RBX, Topaz, but you see you have regular Ruby right here. So we're going to install 2.2.3. RBM install 2.2.3. And this will also take a little bit of time. What you probably will want to do is also open up another shell, change directory cd into your, your working directory. In my case, it's sandbox. In your case, it could be something different. And you probably want to vagrant SSH into it and open up another shell into it. And also install a version of Node. We've also installed Node environment, NodeEnv, which does the same thing as RubyEnv. RBEnv allows you to install multiple versions of Node, and you'll need Node for Rails to run its pre-processing. So what that means is with Rails, it recommends, or it's a convention to use Sass or SCSS, which is syntactically awesome style sheets. It's a superset of CSS, and a lot of the pre-processing that it does convert the Sass files into CSS files is done through Node, as well as CoffeeScript. I think Ruby also is a huge proponent of CoffeeScript. You need to pre-process that into JavaScript files so that the browser will know how to read them. So you need Node for that. So you should go ahead and do that as well. Okay, now we should have Ruby installed and Node installed, so we can check that through RBM versions. You see that there's a system version, which we won't touch, and there's a 2.2.3 version. And for Node, we have 5.1.1. Okay, so what's important to know is that when you're in a Vagrant virtual machine, there is a synced directory that is the same directory that's on your host machine as well as in your virtual machine, and that's called the /vagrant folder. So if I go here, you'll notice that this is the same as the local directory that I have on my Windows computer. And this is exactly where we'll make a project folder, and we'll go into that project folder. And what we'll do is go back into my GitHub repository and git clone the Code Quarters project. So we do git clone and then clone the URL. Okay, and wait until that's done, and then go into it. Okay, so one thing that you probably want to do, once you do that, you can run RBN versions again, and you'll notice that the star is now on at 2.2.3 instead of system. The reason that it does this is that in our EventImp directory, if I do a list everything, you see that I have two files, Node version and Ruby version. If I output what the Ruby version has, it's the only thing in that file is 2.2.3, and that tells RBM to use this specific version of Ruby for this in this directory. So if I actually leave this directory and I say Ruby version, you see that it's Ruby 1.9.3, but when I enter the code quarters directory and I say Ruby version, is running Ruby 2.2.3. Okay, so you might want to do a RBM rehash to kind of refresh it while you're going in and out, but this just allows you know, you to quickly go into, various different projects and not have to worry about configuring it when you enter the directory. You can just go in and, RBM will just handle all the various Ruby versions that you're using. Okay, so this is great. And that's important because in order to, so for a lot of Ruby Rails developers, Ruby developers, they use a thing called bundler. So you want to install that, gem install bundler. Oops. What bundler does is it is essentially just package management, dependency management. So it allows Rails is a Ruby gem. When you start a Rails project, most likely you're going to be using other gems, and you want to make sure that depending on which project you have, those gems don't conflict with other ones. And it also allows you to specify which version of the package or gem that you're using. So it does a lot of things under the hood. And so you'll need it in order to run our project. So in order to get all the dependencies, you can just run a bundle install. But what I actually like to do is I like to have a custom directory in which I install these gems into for each project. It's just something that I personally like to have instead. You don't have to do this. You can just run bundle install these gems, and you can go. Okay, so I finished installing these gems, so now you can cd into the code quarters, or I should say EventImp project, and you're going to have to run bundle install again. There's a bunch of other libraries here that it's specific for this project. So we want to basically run bundle install again. So now what you want to do is you can run bundle execute Rails, and then you want to specify that you want to run this Rails server, specify the IP address and the port number. 5000 I think I specified. I go back to my browser. I can open up a new tab and go localhost and go 5000, and I should be able to see the current EventImp web page that's on the Git repository. Okay, so once it loads, you notice that it has a landing page. It has an about page, a contact page. So it has a few links to some static pages, but it also has this sign up page. I need to fix that, but it essentially goes to sign up, and I can actually go ahead and save an account. It doesn't matter if I do these typos. But look, if I have some validations here where I need to have at least a minimum of 6 characters in the password. If I do something like this, see, it also checks that my email is invalid. So we're going to get into how I've implemented it this way. But for now, let me just show you that it works. And there we go. I created a new user, and yeah, users are being created. It's being synced up with the database. There's some routes into some interesting static pages for information, and that's so these things are the topics I'll be going over in the next several videos in terms of how I got to this point. So, but what I wanted to show you was that essentially the application is running and the development environment has been set. So thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next video.